Well, here we are, Jennifer. Welcome to Wine Wednesdays or Culture Uncorked. And wow, what a night to do this, the night before Thanksgiving in the US. It's a weird Thanksgiving this year, I think, for a lot of people. And so on behalf of us who are both American and Canadians, like a Canadian like I am, and both our American and Canadian audience, on behalf of the Canadian audience, happy Thanksgiving to all of our wonderful American family and friends, and a special Thanksgiving to you. And welcome to our little fun event here that we do on Wednesdays. Great to have you.
Thanks so much. I'm super excited to be here. Wish I had brought my wine, although not sure it'd be conducive to conversation, but I hope y'all are.
It's sort of the intent and the metaphor behind it. You know, sometimes we have wine, sometimes we don't. We are in wine country here, and I like to tell all of our American friends that where I'm broadcasting from is the wine country of the western part of Canada, and it's Lake Tahoe meets Sonoma. It really is. It's really a magical place. And Garrett, who's in the back room, our son, lives in Austin, Texas, as you do. And every once we invite him up here, we just promise that he does not try and bring any Texas wine, because no one convinced me that Texas make wine.
I didn't even know they had wineries in Canada. I mean, I assume wineries are everywhere, but I figured it would be too cold up there. So just go to how little I know.
I know, and that's one of the things about the desert. Kind of goes up from, actually, as far as Sonoma, kind of the high desert comes up this way, and in the summertime here on the West Coast, it's quite warm. It gets in the 90s pretty much through the summer, and I'll use Fahrenheit for our American friends. And in Ontario, the Niagara Peninsula, there's a big wine area in there as well. So like you say, everybody's growing wine today, including Texans. So it's fair game for everybody. But we're here to talk more than wine. We're talking about, we have someone who's living on campus these days, working on campus, Google's campus, and you are focusing on helping them find all these people. And I know what a big deal it is for Google to find their, googly kind of people that really that they need going forward. And Jennifer, we just want to get so many insights from you about the relationship between culture and recruitment and hiring. And I just want to tell everybody who's on to go to Jennifer 𝙒𝙤𝙤𝙚.com, and your site. I mean, you are like a recruitment genius. You've got resources on there. You've got a way to help people great on LinkedIn, resumes, the entire package. So thank you for coming and bringing your perspective. And I just want to start off by just asking you, look, the world of hiring and recruitment is so dramatically changed. What is happening right now from the point, like, give us your, behind the scenes. I know we can go to your website, but what's going on, Jennifer? What's happening in the world of hiring and recruitment, particularly in COVID and everything else? What are you learning, and what do you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, of course. On that note, I think I would dive first in and say that the world is growing increasingly more virtual. And if you don't get on that bandwagon, you're going to get left behind. So definitely everything is growing more virtual. The way we submit applications, the way we network, the way resumes are screened. Many places rely solely on the applicant tracking system now to screen through those resumes. And now that's not always true of every company. Part of what I do is reading resumes, but not every company is going to have the resources and the ability that Google has to have real people read every resume. So often the way to get around that is to use these applicant tracking systems. So really just keeping in mind that as we continue to grow and professionally develop, that it's going to continue this way, and to really start tracking ourselves in regards to this new virtual world to make the most of it.
So let's go explore that a little bit further, because when you say make sure that you're fully capable of being digital and virtual. What are some of the attributes that give you an idea that that applicant is really kind of literate that way, more than just sort of in a passing kind of a way? And I mean, more than just being able to go on LinkedIn and upload a resume. What are some of the indications that this person's kind of hip from that kind of virtual digital perspective?
Right, right. Well, it's not necessarily something we require for every role. So it's not something that I'm necessarily looking for in a candidate, like you must be very well digitally versed or we're not going to hire you, but really more so from the sense that if you're a job seeker looking for a job, or if you're looking to change roles and you aren't digitally, versed, you're going to struggle. You're going to have a hard time, meeting the demand and finding those roles, because everything is just growing increasingly more that way. Especially with COVID right now, obviously we can't physically network and be together. And so, we're really relying on LinkedIn and these virtual platforms. So your ability to navigate them and to highlight yourself and be able to share yourself is really going to be pivotal as we continue into 2021 and beyond, especially in regards to content, networking on LinkedIn, and just making sure that you have, coding skills, the necessary Google Suite, Microsoft Suite, all those sorts of skills to, do basic jobs as well. Because without those now, in this day and age, you at least need to know the computer basics really to work almost anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've had a chance to hang around Mountain View. I've been on the bikes. I've eaten in most of the cool places to eat, both in Mountain View and Toronto and other places. And, I've been there for TGIF when it's been around. Of course, I don't think you do it anymore. But I know, though, that even though there's over 100,000 people involved working at Google worldwide, they're pretty fussy. There's a real kind of, without getting into their secret sauce, though, what are some of the real cultural indications that person, they may not get the job, but that person looks pretty googly, pretty grayly, pretty whatever the acronym is, that they might be a great match for Google? What are some of the indications?
So for me, it's really going to be more of your soft skills, your teamwork, your ability to collaborate, your ability to, put your ego aside and be able to work on a team to find the best solution, not your solution. And those sorts of things, although you can look for soft skills on a resume, and so that's often what we're honing into in those moments, a lot of that is really just going to come out in the interview. And I feel like the recruiter and the interviewers know, within 5 minutes or less, I'd say, whether or not, based on the way you hold yourself, the way you speak to your previous roles, whether or not you're the kind of person they would want to come to Google or continue to associate with. We really look for people who are well-rounded, respectful, able to come together to really focus on those big picture ideas, more of the we, not the me. And a lot of that can only be sussed out once you actually speak to someone. But in the sense of a resume, for the sake of job seekers and how they can make themselves stand out in that way, definitely making sure that you hit hard on those soft skills relating to teamwork, collaboration, and leadership. 100%.
Okay, so we don't rehearse any of this. This is all just fun stuff. Okay, so let's say I was just showing up and you were interviewing me. You won't give me the first couple of minutes.
The first couple minutes of the interview?
Jennifer, I'm so glad to be there. I'm applying for the Chief People Officer job of Google, and thank you for asking me to interview. So, yeah.
So I would say that I would probably open up, one of my favorite things to open with is to ask you how you deal with conflict, and to ask you to describe a situation in your previous role in which there was conflict between you and another individual, and how you came to an appropriate solution.
Oh, I love it. So that would be an opening kind of a salvo.
Yeah, sometimes you just go for it.
exactly. In particular with the chief people officer, right? You'd want to know how they handle conflict.
Yeah.
And
100%.
yeah, so I might start with a story about when I was the head evangelist at a bank, and I had to take the entire company from Microsoft to G Suite. And as you might imagine,
People
for a
pitch
lot,
a fit. Did people pitch a fit? They didn't want to do it, I assume.
well, no, it was very interesting because where some of the conflict came from was particular from experts. So we had a persona kind of, we used personas to understand the various type of people. So we just didn't identify people as by role or function, but experts who love the ability to use collaborative and productivity tools. And of course, many of them grew up on Excel. And Sheets is often not a known commodity for them, or they had a view that it was underperforming and it didn't have the attributes of Excel. And so, how might you deal with, in that case, a very high level of conflict and turn that out to be a very positive thing? I would tell that story around how they did it, but I would also be equipped to talk about a story where I had conflict with a CEO that I worked for, and we saw things a different way. And I'd want to talk about, what I learned about being self-accountable around being able to manage that, because, there was a part of that in that where every dumb thing I've done probably, or most dumb things, is when my ego's gotten in the way. And I've been trying to be more about being right than doing the right thing. So I would probably share with you around, hopefully, how much that I have progressed and learned around how to navigate that, but and that I'm more equipped to be more personally accountable around how I might move relationships forward. So hopefully I'd be starting to get by your first question.
No, I think that's a great answer. It shows, humility. It shows ability to collaborate. I think sometimes people get caught up in, an interview. Obviously, you're showing your best skills. You want to put your best foot out there. But oftentimes putting your best foot out there is showing your ability to grow and change. And oftentimes the way we do that is by providing an example, much like the one you did, about a time where you didn't do great at something, where you failed, where you needed work or progression, because it speaks to, your honesty, again, your humility and your ability to take feedback, grow and change, and that desire to be better. So
yeah, one of the things that I remember, and I wrote a book, and it's in my book, and it's public, and I've talked to the people, and I told the people involved in this about the story. But I was working for the Los Angeles Kings Hockey Club, and I loved the job, loved it, just totally loved it. And Tim 𝙒𝙖𝙣𝙎, who is maybe the best sports leader in all the world, and he and I just saw how to deal with people differently. And there's just a different angle. And I spent a little bit of too much time thinking about how screwed up he was in his thinking and how right I was. And so I spent more time trying to convince other people that I was right and that he was wrong. And it took me to a completely wrong place. And that lesson has stuck with me, Jennifer, for so long. And sometimes those painful lessons really kind of paved the way. I chose to leave that job, but probably if I'd have been more skillful at that time and being able to navigate it, I may have had more choice around how that came out. But I'm very open about talking about that, and because I think those things do you have to give other people an example and understanding around, like you say, how much you've really applied and learned through those kind of environments. And it's not like you say when you give you're being interviewed to show everybody that no one's going to believe you're perfect anyway, right? So
very true.
Tell me, what would be your next one? So that one would be around conflict. Do you want to dig into collaboration? So how would you explore whether I was collaborative?
So really, a lot of times we just try to focus on open-ended questions. And so it's really just like, it would be very basic, almost. So like, can you provide an example of a time where, maybe you had a difference of opinion with someone, but you had to collaborate on an idea and how you were able to come together and compromise?
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, you watch how someone's mind works on that, do you tend to do it yourself, Jennifer, or are there usually a table or cadre of people with you on doing the interview?
So for my previous role, I used to be an operations and project manager for high profile promotions. I did all the interviewing, hiring, firing, recruiting for 2 years. But in my role at Google, I don't actually do any of the interviewing. So I am very familiar with the process. I can speak to the types of questions and how the process works, but I myself currently don't actually participate in the interviews right now.
So I love this background and experience you have with this, though. So let's say that I was sitting with you, and I was and for whether I was running a company like some people that are going to be on here, or we were starting a company up or whatever, and I said to you, you know, my 3 core values, Jennifer, for running this company are around self-accountability, around respect, and abundance. And I really want to determine, I know we're going to get top-notch candidates with all the skills in the world, right? We're going to get them from Ivy League schools, or we're going to get them from all the schools we want. I know technically, and you're going to help me find those people. What I'm more worried about is I want to know whether they've got those values and attributes. So how would you start to help me form that or shape that up in the recruitment process?
Yeah, of course. So I feel like truly those sorts of qualities do really start to reveal themselves more so in the initial sort of screening process with a phone interview. A lot of that you can't always tell from a resume, which is why we really try to take that unbiased scope. I'm just looking at, because when I look at a resume, if you have a photo there, I'm not looking at the photo. I'm not looking at what your name is. I'm not looking at where you're from. I go straight for your work experience because that's all I care about. All I care about is, can you do this job based on what you've done previously? And once you make it through that initial stage, really in the phone interview, we then start to, suss out those softer skills and whether or not someone is going to have those attributes and be able to work collaboratively and have that sort of level of respect. So just continuing to ask those open-ended questions, getting a real feel for a person in the phone interview by oftentimes letting them take the wheel is what I'd like to do. What would you like to tell me about yourself? What do you feel passionate about and strongly about? People will often have their sort of elevator pitch made up, or they'll have a chance to be really brutally honest if they don't, and let you know where their head's at, the sort of things they value, and hopefully those can start to align. And additionally, looking into their past, their references, and who can speak to the work they've done in the past and their level of competency and ability to work with others.
So what's the real scoop on digital footprint? Like if I misbehaved on Facebook 10 years ago, not that I ever did, but or if there's any of that around, is that hanging out there? Is that the real deal? Is that sitting there like a big kind of, sitting a pendulum?
I think a few years ago, yes, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was the thing, right? Like you couldn't have anything on Facebook that your employers would see. And now it's more so, I really recommend keeping that stuff private. Have your Instagram, have your Facebook, only add the people who you know personally, or if you do add people from work, make sure that you consider them a friend, someone who you would want to continue to associate with outside of work and in that sort of capacity, or who feels like they know you well. Really the only place you want to be interacting with people who could even potentially give you a job is going to be LinkedIn, which is, very much so a professional network, and there should be no sort of funny business going on there, really no religion, no politics, nothing overtly sexual or anything like that, because it's very much so a professional sphere. But I don't really think people go looking for that too much anymore. I think there's also far too much information.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael Smith, I'm going to have a hard time finding Michael Smith on Facebook.
Yeah, I do want. I'll ask Garrett to post JenniferGaribay.com. You've got a YouTube channel. You've got your 10 tips on LinkedIn are just excellent. I really encourage people to go to your website, go to your YouTube channel. I want to now flip over to the other side. Now I'm a top talent, and I want to suss out the real culture. Okay, so yeah, I've talked to a couple friends, and I know this is that, and I've been on Glassdoor, and I see the score is 3.4, slightly above average. The CEO rating is 74, not great, but not horrible. And how do I decide? Help me decide whether, from a cultural point of view, I want to be associated. What are the absolute things that would be killers for me? You would say to me, you see this? Maybe there are no absolutes, but what's as close to an absolute no or are really attractive for you? What's your advice?
So that's a great question. I think there's that can be very multifaceted. One of the biggest points for me is communication. Candidates hate being ghosted. Everyone hates being ghosted in any regard, whether or not it's personal or professional. And so if you are in touch with a company who cannot communicate with you effectively or is not willing to communicate with you when you're an applicant in the process, there may not be a company that's worth continuing to work for or continuing to, want to work for, apply with. And I'm not talking about just, you sent in your resume and you didn't hear anything back, because you can't expect that every time with the sheer volume of resumes that are submitted, unfortunately. But if a recruiter has spoken to a candidate in any sense, if you have emailed them once, if you have had a phone screen with them, if you have had any sort of interview contact with them, at that point, it is your job and it is on you to close the loop. And it is your responsibility as a recruiter and someone who is the guardian of the culture where you work to ensure candidates receive this white glove experience and truly get treated with fairness and respect. So if you aren't receiving that sort of communication, if you had a phone interview and you haven't heard anything in 2 months, I would seriously sit there and consider, is this the kind of place I want to work for? Because most places who have their stuff together aren't going to let that happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Like you say, it's one thing. Don't expect if, like at ATB, when I was a chief people officer, we had 5,000 people. We used to get 50,000 solicited, unsolicited resumes. There was no way. We tried, but we just couldn't get. However, if someone's contacting you and you're in there, then that brand is being represented by the recruiter. And if you're getting screwed around, then what's going to happen after you get there? And so if you and I were to design the perfect welcome product for a person coming to an organization, we were going to welcome the hell out of them. Like, not just onboarding, but welcome them. What would be the key pieces of your welcome strategy?
Wow, that is a great question. No one's ever asked me anything like that before. For me, I think one of the things that makes people feel most welcome and that really hits upon culture, and something that I think my team actually strives at and does very well, is connecting with people and really just getting to know each other. When we had 5 new team members come onto our team about a month ago, even though it's a virtual setting and our schedules are all crazy, we had virtual lunches and virtual coffee chats set up all week with these people. We encouraged everyone on the team who's an older member to reach out to them and set up a time to at least chat for a half an hour, so that these people in this virtual world can at least feel like they know those of us who are already here and together and, a part of a team. And it's hard to come into an environment where people are already friends or people already work well together and you're sort of that odd man out. So I think part of making people feel very welcome would be to maybe have some sort of event, some sort of mixer, some sort of get to know the team or team building that day. I think that can go a long way to setting the tone, showing that you care about culture and connection. and just driving that team experience so that you can work together more cohesively.
I completely agree with you. And, you know, when I was at Mountain View, I had a chance to be with some of the top HR execs. And I think there was some data, because you know what a data-driven company Google is, that I think that if your manager that you were working for, I think they had a policy for a while, I don't know if they still do, they had to show up and be there for and welcome their team member the first day. And I think they had the data that when they didn't do that versus when they did, and the success rate just on that one, even though there may not be exactly a direct correlation, but the relationship was quite astounding, right? Just that act. I mean, you hear about organizations where people don't meet their bosses for 2 weeks, or they don't get their laptop for 5 days, and then password comes 5 days after, and you kind of go, what the hell, right? I mean, I know organizations are big, but the idea of personal connections, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely pivotal.
Travel with me to the very other end. So I always tell people in any organization that I've run or I've been the chief people officer at, is to write your last day, your first day. Everybody's going to leave one day, right?
Sure.
And so when you can have people, and assuming it's not egregious, right? Nothing stupid happens, But Jennifer, how many people do you know that end up leaving not because they've done anything poorly, or it's just that there's a change in direction, a change in philosophy, a change in skill. Like, it's happening every day, right? So one day, these wonderful people that you recruited might get asked to leave.
Right.
So what if we could, explore with me, how would we make leaving the most dignified thing possible? What would you put in that product, the leaving product?
Okay, so in regards to leaving, I think that, and again, my team does a pretty good job at this, we really get to own our own space and have autonomy in the way that we work and control our workflow. So very much so in the sense of leaving as well. As you're leaving and you're leaving your recruiting partners, you're leaving your role behind, having a chance to button up any projects you're working on, or hand them off to a different POC, point of contact, who you trust to continue working on that project, who is going to see your vision through, follow it till the end. So really having control over even that. I know people have had to leave and move on to other opportunities, and have been very fortunate in the sense of sort of get to pick the person who fills their role in a sense. Obviously, the hiring manager on a team has final say over what happens in the larger corporate sense. But when working on smaller 20% projects or smaller projects within your team in order to help improve efficiency or collaboration or candidate experience, those things that we really have full autonomy and control over, you really get to help guide those to the end and decide how that vision will be finished or who by, which is something that I think is really special when you don't get to see something through until the end.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate that comment. So then why the hell are we still walking people out of buildings? Why are we turning their computers off? Why are we boxing their shit up and sending it home? Why are we doing that?
That I could not tell you, because I know not every manager is like that. I know and have personally spoken to some who are not in that way, especially with, contractors. They've had an offer, and they're a contractor. So, I've seen their boss let them finish their contract for 2 weeks because there's no sense in letting them go prematurely. And that doesn't do right by the person that they oversee, this teammate that they've worked with and they've worked hard, and they don't deserve that. So no, I agree with you. And I think it happens too often.
Well, we're going to change the world with leaving and welcoming, Jennifer, because I think we've not done those bookends like I think we might in the future. And I think that's got a big impact. It says a lot about your culture when around how you attend to that, right? So you were kind enough to we're very interested. So let me set this up a little bit. We're really interested in the world of belonging. Like, we think the world So I'm very committed to culture as the overall framework, and I've got a framework and a system around how I think about that. At the team level and at the individual level, my observation is that as we move through diversity, inclusion, social justice, that there's this deep craving that we have for belonging, and in the best sense of the word. And a lot of times I'll ask people around, what did it feel like when you really belonged and part of something? And people describe that. And then if you ask people, what did it feel like you ever felt like you didn't belong? And it's quite remarkable how people have those visual kind of or emotional components in their head. So the data is, of course, is that, not surprisingly, the more you feel like you belong, the more you contribute, the more your success and the team's success increases. So we asked you, I think Lisa Patrick, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today because she had another commitment, to what you thought about belonging. And you were kind enough to create a video for us. We're starting to collect these. Do you mind if we play that here for the audience?
Yeah, of course. No, happy to share. It's a little bit of how I felt like I didn't belong and then I felt like I did. So I think it works full circle.
Garrett's going to cue it up, and when he gets a chance, hope he's there back there still.
When I first started my contract role at Google, which I'm in now, I most definitely had imposter syndrome and felt like I didn't belong. I had recently come from an environment, bartending and doing more promotional work on the side with liquor companies, and felt that I wasn't polished or suited enough for a corporate environment. And often, really felt the weight of that imposter syndrome and felt like I didn't deserve to be there and I didn't belong because I didn't have a traditional background in the sense that a lot of other people did. It took a lot of time, me being around amazing people, empathetic people, and in being in a space of truly great culture for me to realize why I was there too. And because I had those abilities and those, those traits within myself as well. So it took a while for me to see my value, realize my value, and to find my place in that regard as well, to start to feel like I truly belonged. So it's definitely a feeling that can plague us all, but something that we can definitely overcome with the right support, the right people around us, and the right mentality.
That was very nice, though. Thank you for that. And so we're hoping to help with that. So I'm so interested around, and I really love your authenticity around sort of the imposter syndrome that you kind of felt. So
yeah.
Tell me, if you were sitting around with a bunch of emerging leaders like you, or even old dogs and fossils like me, what would you say about getting past the imposter syndrome? What was your lesson out of that?
No, I love that question. This is something I love to tell people, because it's so true. We get so in our own heads, right? We are our worst enemies, and we often think worse of ourselves than anybody else does. And so one of the things I love to tell people is that no one really cares about you as much as you think they do, in the sense that, like, no one's sitting there scrutinizing you with a magnifying glass saying you didn't do this right or you did this wrong. And we think that everyone's watching every move we make, when in reality, most people are very consumed with their own life and what they have going on, and they're not really paying any attention to you at all. So it's really, it's a self problem. It's something we do to ourselves. So if you can really try to set that mentality aside and realize what power you have in your own brain, and just pushing that away and living for today, putting on your horse blinders, as I like to say. Racehorses, they have those blinders so that they can't see the other horses coming up on the sides of them, right? They're focused on what they're doing, their goal, their path. Because when you stay true to that and don't worry about what other people think or what other people are doing around you, you're happier, you get to your goal, and you stay true to yourself.
That is awesome insight. And I you know what, trying to bring that self-awareness more earlier on in your life helps to move forward, doesn't it? Right. And I think that's wonderful wisdom. What did you learn about culture, recruitment, contribution from bartending? Other than a lot of men have reprehensible behavior, but other than that, so what did you learn?
I learned a lot from bartending. You know, I was very social before that. I've been social my whole life, but I feel like it very much so helped me to hone my social skills in a more professional way, really learn to read people a little bit better, understand a little bit more about body language and how people sort of spark conversations and the directions they take them to. So definitely was a crash course in people and people skills and management in that way. And definitely a lot to learn logistically. You know, obviously it's a very fast-paced environment. And it taught me a lot of patience. So just lots of people skills in that regard and developing and blooming there.
Yeah, and I love how you took that and you translated that into this world you're living in now. And so what have you learned from your 3 dogs? Why 3 and what have they taught you?
So 3 dogs, mostly because I'm a foster fail and I have a problem. But no, I absolutely love them. All of my dogs are rescues. I'm very big on rescuing animals. You know, if there's a particular breed you want, I always tell people like I'm all about a breed, but like try to find like a rescue version of that breed. So you know, all of my dogs found me via, you know, the internet. I follow this amazing, you know, kennel from the heart in my hometown of El Paso. They take the worst case animals, the ones who are going to cost thousands of dollars to help, and they raise funds for them and they save these animals who ordinarily wouldn't get another chance. And I've just seen so many of their stories and they pull on my heartstrings and then I end up taking a little one in. So I have 3 now. I have a heeler mix, a collie mix, and a pit bull mix. So they're all pretty big. But I absolutely love them. They teach me patience. They teach me understanding and love. And I do hope to be a mother someday. So they help me practice with their toys all over the floor, which I step on often. And I am learning. So it's great.
I love those 2 bookends because I think there is so much to learn from all of our experiences and all these critters and other people in our lives, right? So we kind of started here and I kind of want to just back up to it a little bit because I think it's so instructive for people. This really is unique insight. Like, I mean, other than watching, you know, television or, you know, or a movie about Google or something like that, if you had to kind of say, this doesn't guarantee you anywhere near a job or anything, but these would be at minimum the attributes that you'd have to have. You talked about conflict leadership, capability, collaboration. What would you add to that mix, Jennifer?
So I would say very much so on a personal level, and this isn't a hard requirement because we do take people of equivalent practical experience, but generally for most roles you're applying for at Google, you're going to at least need a bachelor's degree. You're going to at least need a bachelor's degree, and if you don't have a bachelor's degree, you'll definitely want to have equivalent practical experience. What that means is very much so up to the hiring manager and recruiter in that specific situation, though. So having a degree is going to be ideal. The ability to lead is critical. You know, Google likes to see people who can grow. They like to invest in people who have the ability to move up within the chain. And in order to move up, you really have to have those people skills, that, you know, that googliness that they look for. So people who are friendly, people who are open, people who have, I'd say, high emotional intelligence. You don't necessarily need to be the most talkative person to be emotionally intelligent. Those things are not mutually exclusive. And I feel like a lot of times people think they are. You don't need to be the most bubbly, outgoing person as long as you know how to effectively communicate with people when you need to. So just really making sure that you have that baseline of communication with people, the minimum qualifications or any specific like coding languages or anything you need for a more technical type role. But really honing in on the things that make people googly, like their ability to lead, collaborate, and work together well on a team.
So as we move in the post-COVID environment, and hopefully we're going to get behind, past this by next summer, whatever the time that one believes in. The ability to work in a hybrid environment at minimum, remote and on campus or some combination, how do you see that emerging culturally going forward?
I think it's going to happen. Personally, they haven't said anything official yet. It would be official for everyone to know as well. But I know that, Facebook has gone this direction. Twitter has gone this direction. A lot of the other major companies have gone this direction. So I think for Google not to would put them at a disadvantage when in the job market. People are going to be looking for that flexibility. So if they are not going to offer it, it is something that's, I feel, could potentially hinder them. So I see them moving towards that. Again, they have yet to announce it, but I anticipate they will before COVID's up. And I'm hoping that they allow more of a flexible schedule. Speaking from my personal preference, I would love the ability to go into the office maybe once, twice a week, and then still have the ability to work from home as well. Would be most ideal for me.
Yeah, that's, and I agree with that. And I think that's very helpful. So this idea that if you're sitting around thinking that one day remote's going to be off the table, that might not be a very realistic world. Some will go back, but the idea that it's going to be, there may be all or nothing, but there are probably going to be a lot more hybrids. I completely agree with you. Of course, which is this whole notion of being able to show your value independently, right? Working from where you are, leading from where you are. Hey, on this notion of, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought there. Forgive me. What questions do you have, or what thoughts do you have, or what messages do you want to leave? Oh, I did want to come back. One final thing before. I know this is a little bit in your resource material, but I hear a lot of people these days think that they have to, write their resume on the side of a llama, floated in the air with a giant balloon. And there's this, how about all these bells and whistles? Are they vital?
I would say not at all. Honestly, the only time I really recommend your resume being like loud and flashy and colorful is truly if you are like a creative type, if you're like a graphic designer or a film producer or something. Like maybe in those certain situations, you might be able to get away with that, or they might want to see something more in that regard. But truly from a corporate perspective, from my perspective, again, I'm that unbiased view. I don't care about the colors. I don't care about the picture. All I care about is your experience. And so oftentimes those big flashy things can take away from that. If you have a bunch of stuff up top that's all big and your work experience is now pushed halfway down the page and it takes it longer for me to look at it, that doesn't work to your advantage. You want someone to see your work experience as soon as possible. So I recommend cutting the bloat, cutting all those bells and whistles, and really applying strategically for roles that you are qualified for. Because oftentimes people include those bells and whistles because they're trying to apply for something they're not really a fit for, in the hopes that all this flashiness is going to get them through when it does nothing. We really look for that substance.
Fantastic advice. Okay, I'm going to give you kind of a Sophie's choice here that's not completely fair, but I want to, let's say I'm a emerging leader and I have a choice between a gnarly, kick-ass, tough problem. It's going to take me 2 years working for this organization, or I continue in my role and I get an executive MBA. I know it's not, which would you nudge me towards if you were advising me?
If I was advising you, I think I would personally go for the hard 2 years. I think that those 2 years, then the potential they have to teach you and the potential you have to grow and in the ability to develop something from scratch, this solution to this problem can oftentimes teach you more than education can, in my opinion. So I would say that the real world experience would be better in that case. We see so many people with MBAs too, and unless it's definitely like specified in the minimum or preferred qualifications, that might make you look a little bit better, but it's ultimately going to come down to job experience at the end of the day.
What, Jennifer, I've been preaching. I mean, I'm biased to this, so I'm, you know, and I'm so glad to hear you say it, because it's hard to make that choice, right? Sometimes people just think that MBA is going to somehow make the difference. And sometimes, like you say, it does, right? It shows, but it doesn't substitute for this incredible, you know, grind it out, show your grit kind of outcome. Look, what is there anything as we kind of go to a wrap up and a close that you'd like to leave us with, or just things that you want to share to our audience? And I'll just say again, it is JenniferGaribay.com. Cool website, lots of resources. Go to her YouTube channel, and love your LinkedIn suggestions, like I say. And what would you like to wrap up with as a closing comment?
So I would say two things, y'all, to wrap up. As you're looking for jobs and as you're looking for places to call your home professionally, really invest in culture. It does make a difference at the end of the day. You know, you can go somewhere else where you're making $5,000 more a year, but if you're miserable, I promise you it's not going to be worth it in the way you feel about it after the fact. You know, we get so caught up with the shiny thing in front of us that we don't really assess full out, how is this going to affect me in the long run? And culture is pivotal, culture is key, and it's something you should continue to seek out always. And B, my second thought is leave yourself open to opportunities, y'all. You never know where an opportunity is going to come from. You never know what kind of package it's going to present itself in. And don't hold yourself back by assuming that you're not qualified for something, or that something's not right for you. You know, I never thought I would be here at Google today. And if someone hadn't, you know, taken a chance on me and pushed me to do it, I wouldn't have thought that I had the skills necessary to be here. So never sell yourself short. And please do connect with me on LinkedIn. Check out my website. I have just launched a consulting business about 2 weeks ago. So if you need some LinkedIn or resume help, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to be a resource to you all.
Yeah, you're a great expert. I can tell at that. So thank you so much. And Google's not perfect. I love Google just based on my experience, and I can see why they like you. And thank you for your wonderful insights and just hanging out with us. Happy Thanksgiving. I worry about everybody, all your hometown of El Paso. I know it's been tough there. Be safe. Have a wonderful, we know what a great holiday is. I know it's kind of weird. If you see Garrett out walking around, you know, be nice to him too. He's there. So, and all right. So, and thank you so much. And we really appreciate it. Yeah, you're going to belong to the Belongify team one way or another. So thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you guys. It was great to be here.
Great. That was great fun. Thank you. Bye for now.